Hi Dana, thank you very much for finding time for this interview. It's a great pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Diana. The pleasure is all mine.
Thank you. So I want to start from the beginning on, from your roots. I know that you have Palestinian roots, but you were born in Abu Dhabi. What was the path of your family to this point?
So both of my parents, my mom and my dad, they were born in Palestine. After 1948, they left their villages. They were forced out of their villages, and my parents made sure that all of us are rooted, because no matter where you go in the world, and as Palestinians, a lot of us are outside of Palestine, so it's important to be rooted even if you've been uprooted, and it's possible to be rooted with these small things. So I've always have these images from my childhood. A picture of me in a traditional Palestinian dress that was in our living room for as long as I can remember at home. It's these small things that connect you to your homeland. What I love about Palestinian culture is that it brings all of us together. Palestinians living inside Palestine, outside, those who come from mixed cultures like you. It's kind of this link that keeps all of us together. And when we talk about the culture of the tatriz or the dresses, and it's so traditional yet so modern and so up for being modernized, basically. It can be, you don't have to wear a traditional dress to represent Palestinian culture. You can have it like on your very elegant and very modern blazer, for example.
And there are many nice designers now, Palestinian designers, who do it very nice, combining it with a modern fashion. Huh?
So it keeps us rooted, it keeps us grounded, and I think it's very, very rich. It has two things. It has history and where we come from as Canaanites, and it also represents and reminds us of our present and what happened to our ancestors, so we never forget. And it also, like for example, look at this necklace. This is the Palestinian map, and the diamond is where my origins are, my city. So I come from Zakaria, which is a village outside of Hebron, Khalil. So whenever I hold it like this, it just makes me feel something. It reminds me where I come from. And this is the beauty of Palestinian culture.
I also always ask myself, we have nationalities that sometimes divide us, but I think that cultural roots is something that enriches us. It doesn't matter where we are born, where we live. In a certain stage, it starts to give us some fruits in what we do, correct?
I agree with you 100%. I was in a conversation with someone about this a couple of days back. He believed that we need to be just humans, so that we can all be similar and not think of our differences and not face any racism or stereotypes. And my opinion was the complete opposite. It's super important to be rooted, but open to the world. And open to accepting anyone, no matter who they are, where they come from, what their beliefs are, how they live their lives, how they make choices every day, what their choices are. Being rooted gives you so much confidence, gives you so much safety, and gives you so much personality. It's who you are. You don't have to basically tell everybody you meet that I'm from there and this and that happened. No. It's just important for you. It's important for you when you start a family that your kids are rooted, know where they come from.
And how did you come to journalism? Why did you make this choice, and what do you love the most in this profession?
So basically, I knew that I wanted to be a journalist unconsciously before, because since I was a child, I loved stories. I used to beg my sister to tell me a story every night before we go to sleep. And then I started loving storytelling. I like to retell the stories that I hear. And both of my parents were under the impression that I'm going to be a doctor or an engineer.
Typical Palestinian
family. This is success in life, especially if you're good at school. I was really good. But I had a different dream, and I was afraid to share this dream before. But when I graduated school, I felt like this is the time I have to make decisions for myself. If I choose any other profession, I'm going to be a big failure. I'm going to fail. They were shocked in the beginning, but it took them a while to absorb the shock and to rethink what they've had in mind for the past 18 years for me. And I was lucky because around the time I graduated school, Mohammed bin Rashid School for Communication opened at AUD, the American University in Dubai, and Sheikh Mohammed was giving scholarships to top students. So I applied for the Mohammed bin Rashid scholarship, and I got it, and I studied mass comm, concentration in journalism, and I also did a certificate in Middle Eastern Studies at the American University in Dubai. So as I was progressing in my studies, I learned much more and more why this is for me, because you realize how much influence you can have, how much positive influence you can have. You possess immense power to change lives, to help people. When you focus on humanitarian stories, when you retell a story in a way that captures the real emotion and of people, giving voice to the voiceless. This is journalism for me. I did a project that I think is one of the greatest highlights of my career. It was about Syrian refugees. We covered the refugee crisis in Europe. I traveled to Greece, Germany, Sweden, Norway, two different cities in Germany, Berlin, Munich. I spent 30 days documenting the Syrian refugee crisis at its peak. It was 2015, 2016. And I was able to do 30 humanitarian stories that touched my heart, and I think a lot of the viewers' hearts and minds. And that's when I learned how powerful our job is and how much influence we have and how much positive change we can evoke in our societies. Then I started presenting a daily news bulletin on the morning show for about 4 to 5 years. Today I'm a producer of Sabah Al Khair Ya Arab, the flagship morning show on NBC, and I present segments on culture, books, film, infotainment, the production industry in general, in media.
And I know that literature takes a big part of your journey. Which kind of books which kind of literature do you personally prefer?
I've been reading since I was so young that at some point I never fully understood what I was reading as a child. I didn't read children's books. Mm-hmm. I used to read books about philosophy and not understand them. And I used to ask my dad, I'm like, because I used to steal the books from his own library. Wow, like I don't understand. Why are you making me read this? He's like, you will understand one day. It will be in your subconscious mind. And it's true. So many of the things that I've read are still in my memory, or when I reread something similar to something I read when I was so super young, it makes sense. So I've been obsessed with reading since I was a child. I was the youngest of 5 children, and there was a gap between me and my brothers and sisters age-wise. I was 6 years younger than my sister and 13 years younger than my eldest brother. So I always felt that I had a world of my own. And at a very young age, most of my brothers and my sister, they traveled to finish their bachelor degrees and studies. So I was alone with 2 parents with an age gap as well. So reading was my escape. I used to travel the world when I read. I used to read a book before I sleep so I can dream something similar to it. So that's how I got into reading, and it stayed with me. And it proves especially important for journalists. You need to always be, not just to get information, but also to keep your mind working, read different terminology, have different ways of expression, because our job is all about expressing things in the best way possible. And this is what you learn from authors. So I love Russian literature, literature from Czech Republic. So I'm fascinated in general with literature translated into Arabic. And I love so many Arabic authors, or like Mahmoud Darwish when it comes to poetry, Ghada Samman as a novelist, Ibrahim Isa from Egypt. He's fascinating, the way he tells stories, and he mixes history with storytelling, with fiction with non-fiction. Ahmed Murad from the new generation. So many names, I can't just pick a few. And from Turkey, I love Elif Shafak. I like her as a person, and I like her work. I like how revolutionary she is against injustice in her own country, and how much of a feminist she proves to be. She doesn't just say things, she proves that she is a feminist through her work and through her activism. So yeah, way too many. I don't want to forget. You have to see my library at home. It's and every period of my life, I lean more towards a certain kind of literature or certain authors more than others.
And you mentioned now feminism. I know many people talk now about it, but what is it for you?
Feminism to me is believing that men and women have equal rights and equal responsibilities. It's something that really concerns me, especially in our region, because we're not there yet. We're not even close to getting there. Women are categorized, and this is a global issue, but I always think in terms of my region and my roots and where I come from. But to a certain degree, I think we're way behind when it comes to women's rights. They should not be up for questioning. Women should be able to give their kids citizenship. In most of the Arab countries, women are unable to give their kids citizenship. This is one of the basic rights. Up until today, a lot of women get murdered. They get beaten up by abusive husbands, abusive fathers, abusive brothers. So I believe that change starts with each and every one of us. We need to use the power we have, whatever you do in your life. Even if you're a stay-at-home mom, you have the most important job in the world. You can raise men who believe that they are equal to women, who don't believe that they have authority over their sisters, and women who actually believe from within that they don't need a man to give them value. They don't need validation from men. They can be independent and on their own. So this is what I hope through my work somehow I get to do this.
And coming back to literature, you know, we are living in the world when there is less and less time, but more and more information. And we can see that unfortunately the text gets shorter, videos get shorter, everything gets a bit, maybe not simplified, but at least, you know, shorten the content. What do you think is the future of literature, especially in the time of the metaverse? Because you said you being kid, you needed books to open these doors for you. But what do you think is the future of the books today?
I don't think books will ever die. And what we believe as a society or a nation ends up being true. I've always heard that in the Arab world, people don't read, they don't read as much. But when I started doing the book segment on Sabah al-Khair ya Arab, discovered that there are so many readers. People read. And although books were my main source of knowledge, and this is where my imagination sort of formulated, I don't necessarily agree that it's for everybody, as long as you get this knowledge somehow. And I don't like it when literature or reading is spoken about as if it's for a certain, for a niche in society. Only certain people read, 5% read for the rest of us. No, it's okay not to like reading. It's okay not to be able to focus on a book, but get this knowledge somewhere else. You can get this knowledge from articles that you read, even if they're short. You can get it from a documentary. You can get it from sitting with people like you and actually listening to them. So no matter what your source is, I believe it's valid. And this curiosity, it gives you a reason to live and to be wondering all the time. Especially that today with the internet and with social media, we have so many sources. You don't have to go to a library and do a research. Knowledge comes to you. All you have to do is look for it. So as long as people are looking for it and being critical about what they see, critical about what they read, differentiating fake news from real news, then I think we're good.
And as you are in general working a lot also with culture and now educating, I'm very curious to know, what do you think about modern art?
I'm fascinated with postmodern art, especially with people like Banksy. I'm fascinated with his work, the way he's able to mock and represent. It's in the streets, it's for everyone. And this is what I believe. Culture is for everyone. Books are for everyone. Art is for everyone. It should not just be in museums or art galleries.
So Dan, I know that you started lately your podcast. So can you please tell a bit more about it? What is the main idea of it?
Okay, so the podcast is called You Can Relate in English, and the name is in Arabic is أحاديث بتشبهنا. So from the name, it's relatable. And because I believe in my core that culture is important, books, movies, documentaries, even the series you watch, all these stories, they matter because they both represent us. They represent sometimes our fantasies, sometimes our reality, or what we can be in the future. So I wanted people to grasp this and know that no, books are not for certain kinds of people. Books are for everyone because they tell our stories. We can relate to them. Same goes for movies and documentaries, or even a piece of art that you see, because they're inspired by our lives and they inspire our lives. So in every episode, we pick with a guest a movie, a book, a documentary, even an artwork, and we discuss this book in terms of our lives. So in the beginning, for example, I talk about the book and the movie for people who don't know it or haven't seen it. And then the whole conversation is themes inspired by this book or movie, and not necessarily discussing the artistic aspects or the plot itself. We're just inspired by this book.
So it's like a reading movie club, let's say, where people can meet, discuss, and that's very nice. And as you say, like the books or movies that we see also in the childhood, I think they really form our personality in a case, because we know that psychology of people is until 6 years you get formed by what you see. Can you remember a book or a film that really made an impact on your life?
I think the movie that I remember the most was about Omar al-Mukhtar and the Libyan struggle for freedom, because I watched it so many times as a child, and it's just always so emotional and touching, seeing people's struggle for freedom and for dignity. It was very inspiring to me. The quote that I live by, and it's not a quote, it's a verse from the Quran. I will say it in Arabic and then attempt to translate it in English. It says وعسى أن تكرهوا شيئا وهو خير لكم وعسى أن تحبوا شيئا وهو شر لكم والله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون صدق الله العظيم. It means maybe you will love something or want something in your life, but God knows that it might hurt you. It's not good for you. And maybe you will hate something in your life, but it turns out to be good for you. God knows, and we all don't know. And I think it's very true. Because sometimes you go through a lot of hardships in your life. You go through periods in time where you think, why is this happening to me? You fail at something that you've been working so hard on or dreaming of achieving. At the time, you're devastated. And we all go through these. So this is the verse from the Quran that I keep reminding myself of because God knows something that I don't. And this thing that I think is good for me might not actually be good for me. This trip, for example, that got cancelled, maybe if I had gotten on that plane, it would have crashed. Maybe something bad would have happened to me. So it always keeps me grounded and grateful thinking of this verse, because it also reminds me of all the things, the good things that have come from bad things, and the good things that have come from bad people in my life. I think happiness is not a state that you can keep. It's moments in time. It's going back when you're 80 and thinking of your life. Whatever you remember, this was the true happiness. So for me, my family being okay, in good health and successful and happy is the greatest happiness for me. Teaching is happiness, knowing that I've shared knowledge with the students and it made a difference in their lives, or it made things easier for them, or it widened their horizons. I remember last class, one of my students told me, "You've ruined me now," because we were talking about postmodernism and postmodernist theory and how postmodern theorists basically are telling you to think outside of the box that you have. Everything is valid, re-question everything, not take anything for granted. And it made that student think about everything in his life. So he told me, "Yeah, I think today you've changed my life." Maybe it's a bit melodramatic, but just helping people see things in a different way, helping them realize their dreams, their their ambitions is something that is very fulfilling and rewarding for me, even outside of academia.
Dana, thank you so much. That was very nice talking to you, and I wish you, of course, a lot of success with everything you do, and with now the stage of the life where you start to share and help the others to achieve their goals.
Thank you,
so
Diana, and I want to tell you that I'm personally so proud of you, so proud of your achievements so far, that you are representing Palestine in so many ways, and this is the power of media. This is why you and many other Palestinians that I meet on a daily basis and see even on social media, even if I don't get to meet them in person, they fill my heart with so much happiness, joy and pride. So thank you for that.
Thank you, shukran.